What's going on, guys? This is Matt back with another video from Sound Effects in Lewes, Delaware. And today I am bringing you a 2016 BMW X5M series. So this is actually a YouTube customer. He traveled all the way down from Canada, about 1,000 miles, to get this job done. And kind of give you a walkthrough of what we did here. So me and him, we talked for like 6 months to a year, talked about product, what would be the best route to tackle this car using all the factory locations. And kind of show you what we came up with here. We have all the audio equipment is installed here in the back. So right now it looks like it's 100% factory. You don't really know anything's installed. We have kind of the brains of everything right here behind this panel. So everything is fully accessible. We have the main power coming in where we can just kill power to everything. We have all our fuses for each amplifier right here. We have our ground distribution here. We have our Mosconi 8 to 12 DSP here. Everything's obviously labeled. We have our Mo bridge here. So the really cool thing with most modern European cars with fiber optic OEM amplifiers is that we can install this Mo bridge piece and eliminate the factory amp entirely. Okay, so the fiber optic plug that went to the factory amp will now go into our Mo bridge. We flash the Mo bridge for the car, and then it outputs a perfect 20 to 20,000 hertz signal that is unclipped. Okay, so it mixes in everything that was summed from the factory amplifier. It mixes everything, so you still have perfect Bluetooth voice, nav voice, all that kind of stuff. Backup sensors mixed in with your front channels. And that outputs, in our case, analog audio into the DSP. Why analog? We could also do digital, but we chose analog because the Mosconi 8 to 12 DSP has one Toslink input. So if you've watched some of my other videos, you know that I generally always install a AMAS 2 chip, which is a Bluetooth chip that you can stream a device, a high-res player, a phone, directly to the AMAS chip. That way it bypasses the factory radio. Okay, so factory radio is not going to have a high-dollar Bluetooth chip in it, and you're limited to what the factory radio can actually sample. So you can't run DSD files or 24-bit 192 or any real high-res files through factory radios. It's just going to skip. It's going to sound all sorts of craziness. So that's why we do that, so we can start running high-res files directly to our DSP here. You could also run analog out of a high-res player into the DSP, but this is just what we choose to do to make everything more convenient for each customer. So this all in here is perfectly explained, and now I will show you where we have our amps and where we have our subwoofer hidden. Underneath this panel here, this comes up, and then we have everything fully installed under the floor. Serviceability is always my #1 key. So I still want to get to all the factory types of equipment. So you can see I did a new floor here. This is actually removable. So this piece is all this stuff is made from scratch, but this piece just pops up. And right there you can see I still have access to the battery. I still have access to the auxiliary battery. I can still pull out the battery entirely and that battery entirely. All the rest of the space in there was dead space. There was nothing in there other than a carpeted tub for pretty much storage space. So looking at this, again, we can get to all the factory pieces of equipment. We can get to the power supplies for all this stuff easily, no problem. As you can see, the bottom of the, just to point out, the bottom of this removable panel, I have magnets embedded in here. And the magnets actually attach to factory metal points where this factory plastic bracket mounted to. So I didn't have to add anything new. These magnets just magnetize down to this metal right here. And again, it's embedded flush within my panel. So we have a carpeted bottom and we have a vinyl top. And of course it wouldn't be a OEM-like panel if we didn't have a little pull tab here to pull it out. So that just goes back in there very easily. And then looking at the rest of the job, we chose to bring in some factory material. So this is a factory match, black, mocha, different vinyls here. And we have a BMW logo in the center. It's daytime now, so the light is kind of washed out here in the middle where a lot of light's hitting it. But this is generally lights up all orange. Of course, the factory dash, and I'll overlay some video here of what it actually looks like at night or in a darker atmosphere where you can see the full band running across. You can see the factory dash line. That's where this was inspired here. So you have this band of orange that runs under the dash between the two layers, and that's what I decided to do here in the center. All right, looking at the rest of it, it kind of looks yellow. I don't know why. I think it's just because of the camera, and sometimes cameras do weird stuff, but this is actually very orange here to match the interior. I think it's just so bright it looks yellow as I'm recording it, even though it looks orange in person. But we have orange LED accents on acrylic, if you can see there. The floor is kind of in my way. But we have an acrylic bottom. We have a white layer in between the black, and the white is really just to pull the outside white of the car into the back, just to give it a nice little accent to break up all the pieces and show the depth. We have two JL Audio 10 TW3s there underneath the grill material, and I have some black grill cloth behind here. You can see some pictures here of actually what the subs look like underneath this panel, and then how it's layered upon that. We have this layer here, and then the next layer that bolts on top of it, all using 1/4" 20 hardware to bolt together. So underneath these panels, you can easily access the bolt points. So you can take it out and put it back together 1,000 times, and it'll always bolt back into the same spot. So obviously this guy's from Canada. If he needs it serviced, I can call him on the phone. I can tell him exactly where the bolts are. Someone can take it apart, put it back together, no problem, and we don't have to worry about fitment issues. So being that this client traveled down, wanted me to do, some artistic stuff, wanted to incorporate my signature somewhere in the build, so I just decided to kind of sign it right there in between the little crest between the two panels. And looking over here, again, we have that white acrylic on the bottom, and then we have a grill mesh here in this opening, but if you look close through, you can see the white acrylic underneath that material there. We have this top piece here that molds in to the opening, and then you can see that on this panel here, I added this little piece of trim to extend this line to bring it all in together to, have that OEM layered fit and finish type of feel to it. I know some people are gonna ask, but the subwoofer, we didn't have to create a vent here in the bottom of the floor. Subwoofers are pretty far down there in the floor. Generally, if the subs aren't right up against something like this, then you're fine. There's enough room for everything to vent and breathe. Underneath these panels, it's all wide open here and here behind the panels. So there's enough air to really move out from everywhere. The only way that you really have to vent this is if there's no air movement and it was literally just causing a rattle or something to resonate here in the back, diverting your attention and killing the soundstage. So that's the theory behind why, in this case, I mean, I can put it down, I can put it up. Sure, it sounds maybe a little bit louder, I guess, because it's moving more air if it's up, but when it's down, you really wouldn't know the difference. So again, that's a look at the back. Shut that there, that locks in. Again, we have our OEM looking rear. That goes up, this comes down. Now, to kind of walk you through what we did in the interior, we have, again, the factory radio. That is our #1 preset, okay? So anytime I want to play anything through the factory radio, I go to preset #1. That runs audio through the Mobridge piece directly to the DSP. Down here, hidden away, I have the DSP controller, and that's going to adjust our volume, our preset, and our sub bass. okay? So if I want to go to preset 2, that's going to run directly to my AMOS of the Bluetooth chip. And that's when I'm going to use something like you see here, where I typically use like an Astel and Kern high-res player, primarily something with aptX built into it. That way you can stream high-res music, obviously, aptX HD specifically. iPhones do not have aptX. There's a lot of Samsungs out there, a lot of Android-based devices that can play DSD files, FLAC music, and high-res music that have aptX built in. So that's something to look into as well. And then we have preset 3, which is basically a mix of OEM and AMOS. And the reason we want this is because we want to have nav voice, Bluetooth, and all that kind of stuff still functioning as we're listening to AMOS. Obviously, if you're taking a phone call, you just have to mute this source of your high-res player, your phone, or whatever it may be. That way you can take your Bluetooth call, but that prevents you from switching presets every time you get a phone call, or anytime you want to hear nav prompts or anything like that. So the goal there is you just don't play any source on the factory radio. You just have to like put it on Bluetooth and not have any music playing, but just have it up loud enough to where the prompts would then filter through on the preset of the AMOS OEM mix. So in the front, we actually have the Focal 4-inch component in there in the door and the factory sale panel, factory locations. As you can see, we changed the Harman Kardon logo. We put in a Focal logo. That way, it gets rid of the Harman Kardon feel. Looks factory. So again, we have the tweeter there, we have the mid there, and then we have the Focal. It just looks OEM, but you have the Focal woofer underneath the seat. So you'll just, you can just barely see the factory cover there, but there's a Focal woofer. There's a picture of it here of what it looks like underneath the cover. And then in the rear, we also have a 4-inch Focal Kevlar component set. So that really makes up the whole entirety of the system here. A little difficult to get everything to sound well. Obviously you have the mids pointing at the ground, which is kind of stupid. You have the woofers underneath the seat. So it's a little bit of an obstacle to get everything to mesh in together, but with a little bit of work and the right filters, you can get a perfect center image to make everything sound like it's coming right there off the center channel, even though nothing is there working up here anymore. So that's basically a whole run through of the system. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram here. This is where I upload a lot of build pics in real time as I'm doing these builds. Make sure to subscribe, hit the subscription button below. That way you can follow me on more builds in the future. My work email is right here. You can use this to contact me for any questions or any comments regarding different jobs or different projects. Again, most of my business at this point is really YouTube driven, where people are traveling from different spots. Keep in mind, Delaware has no sales tax, so that can really help you save the amount of money to even ship the car. So just factor in sales tax, and most jobs would go to shipping the car here and then shipping it back. That's what we do with a lot of different clients. I'll put my information in the description below. That way you can contact me, my phone number, everything that's going to be there. And again, thanks guys for watching. I appreciate it. Until next time.